This is From Courtroom to Carline, the podcast where we discuss life as a lawyer and a parent.
I'm Rick.
And I'm Jenna.
Your host and partners both in the courtroom and in parenting.
Join us as we navigate the fascinating worlds of life as a parent and a lawyer. Get ready for a roller coaster ride where law meets love and where the gavel meets the car line.
Welcome to another episode of From Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast. Today we have Stephen Bernhardt on the episode. Stephen is a licensed attorney here in Florida. We went to law school together. He's got his own firm now. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't you tell our guests just a little bit about yourself and what you do there at your firm?
After law school, I went and I was a prosecutor for almost 6 years. Left there that was in the panhandle. Came down to Tampa to join a civil litigation firm on the collection side, representing banks and credit card companies, those kinds of things. 2.5 years of that, I left and started my firm where I did the opposite of both, criminal defense and debt defense. Probably 2 years in, I stayed in contact with Stephen Riley, my current law partner. And during COVID, we talked about kind of joining forces. And so shortly after that, she had been doing real estate after she left the state attorney's office. And right around that time, like I say, 2 years after I started, we merged, combined forces, started our firm, Bernhardt Riley. And yeah, since then, that was in May 2021, we merged. There's 24 of us, including Athena and I. So we've had a lot of growth. It's been kind of a wild ride, but yeah, we do real estate, litigation, debt defense, and criminal defense, some personal injury as well.
So when you first opened up your own firm, were you a solo practitioner? Was it just you manning everything?
Yes. Yeah, literally just me. Once it picked up beyond what I could handle, my wife came and worked for me. She was working just kind of part-time, taking care of the kids. So she would help on the side, kind of volunteering. And then shortly after, we had to hire our first person and kind of snowballed from there.
So starting from that point to now, where you mentioned you've got 24 people, working for you, what has that transition been like? How did you get to that point? What do you think has been the secret?
There's no secret, really. It's just we work hard. I mean, Athena and I both, we're kind of workaholics. We get out there. We don't stop. Something's working, we go with it. We're creative. So I don't know if there's any secret. People say work smart, not hard. We try to work smart and hard. Other than that, the way it's gotten there, it wasn't always smooth. We had a lot of trial and error, but, we all talk to people we know had to have success. We, and not just in law, but in business. We have a business coach. So we've done a lot of different things to try to, sharpen ourselves. But yeah, there's no secret. We just keep working.
Let me ask you this. So one of the things that Rick and I want to do is we want to grow. We hope to be where you are, with employees and just growing the business. But we struggle with when is it the right time to add your first associate? What did that look like for you? Because for us, it's like, okay, are we going to be able to give enough work? Are we going to be able to, pay the bills? That's what's nerve-wracking for us. What made you take that leap?
I also listen to a lot of the audiobooks on different business things, and a lot of them recommend taking the leap. So the time is probably now. To answer your question, you just got to jump in and do it. It's kind of like when are we gonna, when's the right time to start a family? There's never, a right time to start a family. You just do it. And so same thing, I think, you take the risk, and, we got lucky with our first hire is still with us. He's great. So, there's a lot of that because getting the right people is monumental, obviously, to building it. But I would say err on the side of going aggressive with the hiring.
How long had it taken you to get to the 24 employees?
Well, like I said, we officially merged in May 2021. I started the firm by myself in May 2019. I brought in Tiago probably right around in COVID, December of that next year. And so, it's been 5.5 years now from 1 to 24.
That is incredible. And I know you and Rick had lunch one time, and he came home and he had mentioned that you brought up the E-Myth attorney book. So we have bought it. I have started reading it. But what did that do for you in terms of growing the business?
Yeah. So before I read listened to the E-Myth attorney version, I listened to the standard E-Myth version, which was, the first one that kind of catalyzed off all these other ones. 4DX is another good one I would recommend. But his whole thing is separating the three different people into one, right? You have your entrepreneur who's a dreamer. You got your manager who's looking at the numbers and trying to evaluate where you are currently. And then you have the tactician, the person actually doing the work, right? And when you're just starting off, you have to be all three. But you also have to compartmentalize the way you think in those different ways. You can't be all mushed together. You can't be just dreaming and not working. So understanding how to compartmentalize those thoughts was huge. And another part of the book is even if you don't plan to grow real big, you still figure out your systems as if you would. And he uses McDonald's obviously as the token example where, they made one restaurant perfect. And then from there, they just duplicated it. So, but even if you're not going to duplicate it, if you can get every system down so it could be duplicated, then that's going to be a really well-run business. So a lot of things like that I just picked up on.
Yes, and so now you're not all in one location. You have employees throughout the state of Florida, is that right?
Yes.
What? Okay. What sort of led you to have that model of business where you are not just all in one location, but you've expanded to many different areas? Because your partner, I think, is still in the Panhandle.
Yes.
How did you come up with that idea, and how has that worked for you thus far?
I have got to give the credit to Athena on that one. I was more old school in that regard, where people have to be here. We need to make sure they're doing things, and she's a lot more savvy with that kind of thing. So she kind of convinced me to do that. Not to mention your pool of talent obviously expands massively. So we tried it, and obviously it's worked. Again, it's the same thing. Got to find the right people. Through the years, we've had some people that take advantage of it, of the remoteness, and that's something you got to just come and take it as it goes and move on and find someone that's not going to. But most people do it right, love it, right? I mean, it cuts down on a couple hours of transportation. They're there with their kids if they have kids when they get home from school. As long as they're not taking advantage of it and they're genuine workers and they take pride in their work, it works out better than I think coming into the office.
What are some of the things that you do to hold people accountable to make sure they aren't taking advantage of the remote work situation?
Nowadays, I'm extremely upfront, even in the interview process. I let them know right away. It's a huge pet peeve of mine. We do a lot through Teams messaging and things like that. So if it's a part of your workday and someone Teamses you, there should never go a significant period of time where you don't respond. Even if it's hey, I'm on doing something, some sort of response. So we are very upfront about that it should be the same thing as going down the hallway, knocking on a door. That's a Teams message. If you don't respond to a Teams message quickly, it's going to be something we bring up. And if it becomes a problem, then we just address it.
One of the things that our marketing team uses is Slack, and they sort of take the approach, and I see it, that if we message them in Slack, it's like you said, it's almost like knocking on the door, a couple doors down. That's how you treat it. And so we're grateful that, they sort of treat Slack messaging that way. And so I think that is very important, them knowing, hey, listen, if you get some sort of Teams message, even though it's something that you can simply ignore, you can't. That's not the way we work. And so being upfront with that in the interview process, I'm sure, sets the standard, and people know right then and there that's what this means. So
I don't have a problem with it.
So you're obviously a dad as well. Why don't you tell our listeners how many kids you have, their ages, and a little bit about them?
We have a 16-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old son. So we're at an easier stage than we once were, but they're great. Our 16-year-old obviously can watch the kids, so we can go out. We're at the point now where it's, hey, we got to run the Costco. Do you guys want to come or not? So it's a nice stage we're in now. It wasn't always like that. The 4 years apart is great because, like, my brother and sister and their spouses each had a 1 and 3-year-old at the same time. And, we never had to go through that because they weren't that close together. But we did have one in daycare, one in elementary school, and one in middle school, all at the same time. So let's talk about Carlines. We had 3 different drop-offs, 3 different pickups. It was brutal. And that was right after we moved here. We didn't know a single person. So we didn't have any support. It was tough. My wife ended up leaving a really good job to stay home, and even though it was a little bit of a financial cut, it was well worth it. I mean, we needed that break.
We don't have a lot of help here either, and there was one point when we had one at daycare close to the public defender's office when we were working there, and then one not so close, but we were committed to changing schools. But that year was tough with the different drop-offs, having to make, sure that we're both appearing in court. So we have definitely dealt with those issues as well. Um, I know your kids are older, but still, how do you manage, owning your business, being a dad? How do you manage that and make sure that you're having time for your family?
It's nicer now because my schedule is a little bit more flexible. They get home around 3-ish. I try to block that time off a little bit off on my actual calendar, so things aren't scheduled hard there. So that's nice. I don't, punch in at 8, punch out at 5. I can work from when I get up. When they get home, I can take a little bit of break, make sure they're all set up, doing their homework, have a snack, whatever it is, and then once they're out, in the neighborhood, whatever they're doing, kind of get back to work there. So right now, it's not so bad at all, especially with them being older. My 8-year-old terrorizes the neighborhood with his friends, so they get home, he puts on his little watch so we can track him, and he's gone. So then I just get back to work. So no trick now. Luckily, it's nice and fluid.
Yes.
You mentioned the neighborhood, and I hadn't heard that before, wearing the watch, being able to track where he's at. That's when we moved from downtown St. Pete to where we're at now. It was such a change in terms of the neighborhood, because downtown St. Pete, it's not really a family kid type atmosphere. So we wouldn't think for a second to let our 8-year-old just, walk down 4th Street or go to downtown. But in the neighborhood we live at now, within a couple weeks of moving in, a little girl knocked on our door by herself, I think 3 years old at the time, and was just, hey, I saw that, you've got some kids my age, can they play, so to speak. And so that was like our introduction to the neighborhood. And since then, it's just been such a blessing for our kids to have the kids in our neighborhood similar age to be able to go out there, play. And yeah, I think when they get a little bit older and we might think about the the watch, that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's great. It's been a game changer. You can call him from it. He can text back. It's great.
Saying that you work from home, have you run into any mishaps or any funny stories that have happened?
The problem was his friends would always come and knock on the door, right? To your point, all the friends would come, knock on the door, and we have a dog. And so it would just, if I was not trying to have a Teams conversation with someone or on the phone, it's just distracting. So I ended up, our front door has that, a big window, and you can see right in. So I got a suction with a hook, put on there, got a dry erase board with a string, and I literally would update the neighborhood on where Braden was. It would say, he's over at so-and-so's house, or he's out in the neighborhood, or he can't play till 5, and then I'd stick it on there, and literally they'd come up to the door and look at it and leave. So that was one little strategy that helped. The big incident that was a kind of a work from home thing was I'm working, Braden comes flying in the door and is just bleeding completely all over his face, so much that I couldn't even tell where it was coming from. And he's obviously sobbing. And so I stop what I'm doing. I go and I wash it off, see where the cuts are coming from. And he's still crying. And he's got cuts everywhere, but one decent one right on the bridge of his nose. And so I'm like, all right, well, I need to take him to the urgent care or he's going to have a scar, which he does still kind of have a scar, but it probably would have been worse if I tried to patch it up. He was okay with it. He usually hates going to the doctor, but he knew that this one we're going. So I'm like, all right, get your shoes on, try to, wipe you up as much as possible. We got to go. And through his weeping, he says, before we go, can I have a bagel? So to this day, I have a picture of him with this ice pack on his bloody face eating a bagel. And so
kids are
great.
Definitely resilient for sure. And, when they want what they want, they have no problem telling you what it is. And, no matter the situation.
Yeah. I'm sure anytime you get a bagel or he gets a bagel, you can't help but to think of that incident. So that's
well, he's obsessed with bagels. So there was no doubt if it was something he wanted, it was going to be a bagel.
You mentioned the sign outside on the window. So one of our neighbors also has a sign that he'll put on his door to let the kids know our kids are napping. But the little girl that Rick was talking about, so we have 3 boys. They're very much boy, very rambunctious. And so when the little girl would come over, I'd get nervous. I have 4 kids in my house now. I can barely handle, my 3. But it was like I didn't have an extra kid because girls to me were, she's so much easier than my 3 boys. So you obviously have daughters. How does that, do they differ from your son?
100%. Yeah. And my wife was like the one that couldn't believe it. I guess I was used to it too because I have a brother and, we were boys and we were out there doing things like Braden smashing his face up, and so she just can't believe it because especially our second daughter, she was extremely reserved. So, our oldest daughter, she was more active, but still a girl, played with horses and stuff like that. Braden is all, we would joke that our old house that had more dents in it from his head than anything else, so he's a bulldozer, but they are completely different.
One of the things that Rick and I are trying to do more is to create experiences rather than toys, because it seems like in our house, they could have a toy for all of 5 minutes and that toy will be smashed and broken. So we try to do trips rather than things now, just because they cannot seem to keep those toys intact.
100%. We did a destination Christmas a couple years ago because same thing. We were like, what are we gonna do with a ton more toys? One year I got this is way back when our oldest was probably 5 or 6. I duct taped a huge box so it would be stronger, and it was her favorite gift she's ever got, and she tore that thing up. She would sleep, put all her stuffed animals in there and like go in there and read a book and sleep and dump it out, use it for a fort. Literally a duct taped cardboard box was the best gift we ever got her.
Wow, I might have to steal that.
Yeah,
That's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, there's duct tape now with like patterns on it too, so yeah, he can get creative.
You mentioned the destination Christmas, and that's something that we're looking into this year because we did the toys thing last year, and we weren't going to do that again. How was that experience like? Going to a destination, because you see a lot of I see a lot of things on social media where it's not really a vacation. You're just having to control your kids in another city. So was it different? Did you feel like you would looking back you would still continue to do that versus having toys at home?
Yeah, I definitely prefer it. The kids loved it. We went to the mountains in North Carolina, and it was the first time the younger ones had seen snow. So to them, it was a great trip. It's actually the older two that don't want to do that every time because they know they only have a few more Christmases at home, especially one's a junior in high school, so she wants to have a few more Christmases at home. And so we're not going to do it every year, but I prefer it. I didn't feel like it was, again, they were still older to some degree, so they're easy. But yeah, we didn't go skiing, but we went to some ski slopes. They ice skated. They did all the snow things, and so it was just a unique experience for them in the mountains. They had never seen real mountains, I don't think, either, the younger ones.
I think that's great that you're able to take your kids and take that time with your family, especially just getting away from work. What do you do personally to make sure that, your mental health, your, ability to just kind of unwind? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's probably where I fail. But even on trips, I'm working. My wife will give me a hard time about it, but there's never a trip where I don't bring the laptop and do a little bit of work. But it's the same thing now. It's so flexible that it's not like I ever have to be doing something at a certain time. I can, once everyone's wound down, everyone's in bed or something, I can crack it open and do some work. I get more anxious if I don't work for too long of a time. So for me, it's almost a therapeutic thing. Like, let's see where we're at, let's make sure everything's good. But it's easier now to shift that around when we're doing family activities. So for instance, when we were there, we would do things all day, and I'd just get back and either first thing in the morning before we got going or in the evening, take care of the work then.
So I know that you are an FSU fan. So I'm assuming you guys are doing fantasy football now. I'll let Rick kind of go on, fill in here.
As you can see, she knows nothing about fantasy football. But no, so when we were in law school, I think we were in a fantasy football league as students. And, I think that was my introduction to it. And it makes pro football a little bit more interesting because you're not just rooting for one team, you're rooting for almost several teams. But, like Jenna said, we both went to FSU together. That's our team. That's what we're obsessive about. And, one of the things that I do for my alone time, it's really one of the only things that I do and ask for is, can I just watch the FSU game on Saturday? And I usually have to record it because, as you know, anyone with kids, you can't use your big screen TV. You got to watch the game on your phone. And so I don't like to do that. I'd rather just wait till the kids go to bed and then you watch the game on the big screen. But, other than, Florida State football, was there anything else that you do that's kind of, your time alone to kind of reset your mind and just relax and sort of dumb down so that you're not always thinking about work or thinking about what the kids have to do for homework and all the responsibilities that you face.
Sports in general is really the wind down time. Saturdays, or if there's one day that it's going to be, hey, I need some time, it's going to be Saturdays, especially during football season. At night, I will say, my wife and I are good about once everyone's down, we will put on whatever Netflix show or whatever streaming service we're on. So we'll watch something each night. We'll try to anyway. But other than that, it's War Chant or or a live game.
Sure. Now you've been to a game. Was it this year or no? Last year you went to a game. Was it in Tallahassee?
Yeah, we went to the Duke game last year and the BC game the year before.
Did you bring the kids?
Yep. Oh yeah.
And how was that?
Yeah, it was awesome. So the first game they ever been to was the BC game 2 years ago. And if you remember, it was the fourth game of our first 4-0 start in a while. It was, coming off those slow seasons. And 2 years ago, my son was 6. So he was right on the edge of, 3 hours is a long time for him to keep his attention. Well, that game, I think we got a pick 6 on their first drive, and then got a 3-and-out, returned the punt for a touchdown, something where we scored 3 touchdowns in like 8 minutes. And after that, we just kind of walked around the stadium, and by halftime, he was ready to go. But he got enough jam-packed in there that it was perfect. It couldn't have been any better for him to think, that's always how the games are. And so it was a lot of fun. And the Duke game, similar, it was a night game, kind of cool. We had another return kick, actually, for a touchdown, oddly. And so a lot of excitement. So, yeah, they enjoy them.
One of the things that woke me up in terms of my life is going to be different now that I'm a dad was when we went to see the Florida State-Alabama game in Atlanta. This was in 2017, and Ricky was 6 months old. And that's when I knew, hey, you can't just go to a football game like you used to anymore. You've got a little baby that's with you. And that was really a huge wake-up call for me. Like, you got to change your normal routine, especially when it comes to events like this. And so we've been to a couple games since. I think it helps when you go with friends or colleagues that also have children the same age, because they're in the same position and they kind of feel what you're feeling. And so we went to a game with Jamie and her 2 kids, and that was a lot of fun. FSU won that game. It was a close game. Now we're still trying to make it up with the 3 of us, because Jacob and Ricky have seen a game, but our youngest one is not. So we're still waiting to see how that's going to go.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's just like taking them to the event instead of, really going for yourself. Braden loves FSU baseball games. They're a little bit different, obviously, but he absolutely loves the FSU baseball team.
It's definitely interesting to start seeing what your kids like. So our oldest, Rick, will, put on football, and our oldest now wants to be like dad and watch the game. So that's been very cool to see. So hopefully they'll enjoy going as well. But it's definitely just a hike to get up to Tallahassee and make sure everyone's behaved and comfortable. But we definitely look forward to going to games.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you guys ever go, let me know.
Absolutely.
Yes. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, we talked about, scaling your firm to 24 employees. How much time do you think you spend in the courtroom now compared to, when you were first starting out?
Someone should be coming in soon to take care of that spot. So once that happens, I probably won't have any courtroom unless there's, double or triple booked, and I just got to step in. But everyone, we don't have any cases that we manage, Athena and I, right? So everyone has their cases. Right now, like I said, there's just geographically where everyone's situated, I have to go to Pinellas a lot for the criminal cases. And but that should end soon. And after that, then they'll handle their cases. They'll go to court, and I shouldn't really have to.
So obviously your name is on the firm. What's the feeling like completely delegating your entire caseload to attorneys that, work for the firm?
I prefer it that way. I think that's the way you have to do it. There's no way you can really grow it if you're also working the cases themselves. I mean, I do like going to court. Honestly, it gets your blood going. I like it to some degree, and each case is fun to work. So there's drawbacks to not having your own caseload for sure, but I do like the strategy part of it and the managing part of it. Athena and I kicking ideas off back and forth, and I think if you do want to grow, it's the only way. So it's not really an option.
Well, and one of the things, that Rick and I have talked about is when we grow our firm and when we think about who we want to hire, we want to be known as a fierce litigating firm, right? So we want to make sure that who we hire fits with how we want to practice law. I mean, you look at Morgan and Morgan, they've made a name for themselves in their firm. So I think as long as you make the right choices and hire the right type of people, yes, you're the name of the firm, but it's those employees and those associates that are the who you want to be working for you. And I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, the people you bring in is the lifeblood of the firm, so that's probably the most important thing.
Stephen, we are so glad that you are on here with us today. Can you tell our guests where they can find you?
Yeah, brflorida.com. That's Bernhardt Riley, Attorneys at Law.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, Stephen.
Thanks, Rick.
And we'll transition now to what happened to Florida Man. For this article on what happened to Florida Man, we're going to focus on a gentleman who was charged with grand theft over $100,000 back in February of 2019. This was a situation where a gentleman stole a bunch of rare coins, but he did not know they were rare. He took them at face value and brought them to a Coinstar, dumped them into the Coinstar, and got merely a fraction of what it was really worth. So he ended up being charged with a first-degree felony because of the value that the coins were worth. And in the end, he was ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $288,605. That was the value of the coins that he took. So a part of his sentence was 5 years in prison, followed by 10 years of probation. Now, the probation is usually enforced so that the person pays back restitution. We see that in a lot of cases where there's restitution. You put the person on probation with the expectation that they pay that money back as a condition of probation. And if they don't pay that money back, then they could violate. But you can't violate probation for failure to pay if you don't have the ability to pay. If you can demonstrate that you're looking for a job and you just don't have the financial means to make the payments, they can't violate you for that because it's not a willful and substantial violation. This is not a debtor's prison type of criminal justice system. So this gentleman, he was ordered to pay a significant amount of restitution, and it's unfortunate that he didn't recognize the true value of the coins that were taken. So, Steve, as a former prosecutor, how would you have treated this case, and do you think this was a sentence that you'd be satisfied with?
5 years seems a little bit stiff for that. Again, I don't know all the circumstances other than what you just mentioned.
I think he had a prior burglary, a prior uttering, and one other charge.
What did he score?
He scored just over 44 points.
14.25 months DOC is what he scored, and he ended up getting 60 months DOC.
Seems a little harsh, to be honest. I don't know if I would have made that my first offer unless there's some other circumstances I don't know about. But the restitution makes sense, like you said. I mean, he's going to have to try to at least pay that money back. To your point, if he would have gotten his the right amount of value for the coins, he probably could have at least had some of that left to chunk it down and at least avoid prison, if not some of that probation.
One of the things that stuck out to me was, one, obviously this seems like it was a person in need. He clearly wasn't stealing the coins because he knew they were valuable. He was just taking them because he needed the money. The other thing is, though, that I thought was odd, and I think there was too much of a time lapse between when he took them to when they figured out that they went to a Coinstar. But you'd think maybe they could have, tried to get them from the machine, but maybe they looked too much like your typical coins that it was just too hard. But what a bad decision to make. So.
Yep. So that was definitely an interesting case. And again, Stephen, thanks for coming on the show. This has been another episode from Courtroom to Carline, a legal parenting podcast.